Hello everyone, welcome back. So I'm going to be doing one of my algorithm spreads today. This is for the collective. I have 7 cards that correspond to the 7 visible planets, and those are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. The only 7 that we can see. And this gives me a great diagnostic picture of the energy of the now moment. And yeah, but before I jump into that, I want to share a story that I think is really relevant to this, and it's all about integration and things like that. So I'm recording this on a brand new iPad that I had purchased a little while ago. And when I purchased this iPad, I also got one of those magic keyboards to go with it. But I never opened the keyboard because I was also shopping around for like a carrying case notebook that I could put it all together and open it and close it like a laptop. Little did I know, the magic keyboard actually is a notebook thingy that opens and closes like a laptop. I had no idea that I had already purchased the thing that I was looking for, right? So I feel like that's message number 1, right? That it's like what it is that you're looking for, you think you cannot find, maybe it's actually already in your possession, right? Perhaps. And the other aspect of it is that when I went to assemble this thing, I was shocked by how easy the integration process was. Literally, all I did was stick my laptop to the keyboard and boom, it worked. I didn't have to download anything. I didn't have to press any buttons. I didn't have to do anything. It literally just worked automatically. I don't understand the sorcery that Apple has been conducting here, but kudos to them. So I know I probably sound like an Amish person that has never seen technology before, and everybody else probably knows that the Magic Keyboard does this, but I'm shocked, and this is brand new for my reality, and I feel like it's very relevant to the now moment, right? So perhaps the thing you're looking for is already in your possession, and the integration that's on its way is going to be much smoother than expected, right? So whatever's coming is going to be a smooth transition, even if you just can't believe it, right? Because if somebody had told me that this would have been easy to assemble, I would have never believed them. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. So at the bottom of the deck, the overall energy, which talks about the role that Spirit's playing in all of this, is the 8 of Swords, right? So it's basically like Spirit very much so encouraging us to activate something. It makes me think of like the red pill, blue pill analogy, where you just can't force a red pill into somebody's mouth, right? It's like they need to come to that conclusion on their own, whatever it may be, the realization, etc. And if you try to force it upon them, they'll just reject it, right? In the Matrix movies, the only reason why Morpheus and Neo could have the conversation about the red pill and the blue pill is because Neo had already discovered the Matrix, right? He was already in chat rooms talking about it. He was already there mentally, right? So Morpheus was really just confirming something he already knew, right? But in the same respect, if you know what I'm saying, if you've ever met somebody that is quote unquote asleep or normal or, unaware of the things that we're aware of, you can't just force that upon their reality, right? It doesn't work like that. The ego is going to double down. They're not going to hear it. They're going to really clutch onto the belief system, especially if whatever you say destabilizes that or whatever. So at least within the context of this reading, the 8 of Swords, it talks to me about what I call the High Priestess boot camp, right? So I believe that in order to become the High Priestess, you have to go through the boot camp that kind of activates the intuition, activates all of those gifts, almost like your classic samurai movie, right? It's like you have to go into the mountains of Japan and live with the samurai for a couple of months until you can learn how to catch the fly, and then you're good, right? So it's like we're in the process of catching the fly, or maybe we've already caught the fly, right? But it's like you kind of need to realize it for yourself before it can be disclosed or before it can be revealed to you. I don't know, that's the overall message. So let's just jump into it. At the foundation, which is in the position of Saturn, I have the 3 of Cups. So the 3 of Cups for me indicates the role that you play within your social ecosystem, right? So maybe within the social ecosystem of a family, you can be a parent, a child, a sibling, a cousin, whatever. But within your friend group or your social group, maybe you play a role within that, right? There's always, there's the comedic relief, the entertainment, there's the dad or the mom of the group, right? The person that makes the plans and the reservations because they have their stuff together. There's there's all different roles that you can play, right? It's like every friend group compares themselves to the Spice Girls or Sex and the City, and it's like, which one is us, right? So that's the thing that's in the process of evolving right now, but I don't exactly feel like it's moving towards something radically new or different, so much as it's almost like having a ruby slippers kind of moment where you're trying to go back to a particular situation. Maybe not exactly as it was, but it's kind of like identifying something in hindsight as a Goldilocks zone, right? Where it's like, oh, you know what? That particular set of circumstances or whatever it was actually a lot more ideal than I realized it was. And it's like coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? If I could go back, perhaps I would reactivate those things, right? But in the position that indicates belief systems, which is the Jupiter position, you have the 10 of Swords, right? And when I add up the math, it adds up to 13, right? 3 plus 10 is 13, which is Death card energy, right? So Death card on top of the 10 of Swords is like believing that this is as done can be, right? It's like it doesn't just have one sword in it, it has 10, it's over. But the rest of the stuff moving forward indicates that that's not true, right? So again, this 10 of Swords is in the position of belief systems. Those are subjective, right? Belief systems are not an absolute thing. You can believe anything. You can believe in Santa Claus or not, right? So this 10 of Swords, whatever you think is absolutely dead and done and never coming back, is subjective, right? Keep that in mind. In the position of Mars, which indicates action or desire, or whatever it is that you're trying to, I guess action, right? Actions that you're trying to take. The 9 of Swords in this position is basically what I'm saying in terms of coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? Where it's like, you know, it sucks that this situation is over because I see how that could have worked, or at least, and it doesn't even have to be relationships with people so much as it can be circumstantial, right? Where it's like being in this place at this time with these variables at play, whatever it may be. But again, in the Mars position in terms of action, it's the energy of coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? That's very much so the 9 of Swords. Like, if I could go back, I would. Now, I don't have the 9 of Cups on the table, but the medicine for the 9 of Swords, like how to heal this energy, is the 9 of Cups, right? So 9 of Swords is coulda, shoulda, woulda, I'm so stupid, I wish I hadn't, blah, 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 blah. Versus the 9 of Cups is looking back in hindsight and saying, you know what? Even though I qualified those things as mistakes in the moment, I see the divine synchronicity of it all, how one door closed and another door opened and blah, 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 blah. But it's also kind of realizing that it's like the opportunity is still there, right? It's something about that 9 of Cups where it's like recognizing that you're still in play, that you're still here, right? You're still alive. You still have time. It ain't over. The fat lady has not sung yet, right? So that's the medicine for this energy, is that 9 of Cups situation. And then in the center of the spread, again, how you're seeing yourself is the High Priestess, right? So I was saying High Priestess boot camp, and then as the High Priestess, right? So it's like, you know that your intuition is fantastic, right? But it's almost like dealing with the High Priestess's curse, right? Or the what would you say? Like the remote viewer's paradox, right? Where the remote viewer's paradox comes to me from a story where I was watching this one guy give an interview who was a remote viewer that had worked for the military, yada, yada, yada. And he said in one of his first assignments, the military handed him, you know, the envelope with the code across it, and he did the remote viewing. And little did he know, inside of the envelope, it said, what is the next and greatest threat facing the United States military? So he looks in and he sees this missile hit a ship and all of these other things, and he gives them the location and what he sees, and the military discards it because it doesn't match up with their intelligence, so they assume he got a false positive or whatever it may be. Well, 3 or 4 days later, the exact event that he predicted played out. Now, he was saying the remote viewer's paradox. The exact event played out because the individuals that he gave the intelligence to did not believe it, right? But he said, what if they had believed it? What if they had listened to him and taken the necessary precautions to avoid that event, right? The event wouldn't have happened. But then if the event doesn't happen, do they look back in hindsight and think, oh, he must have been off the mark, right? So the High Priestess paradox right now is talking to me about things like that, where it's like, we might question our own intuition because things didn't play out, but it's like, what if we manipulated the timeline and therefore things played out differently, right? So the other interesting thing about this particular High Priestess, ooh, I hope that didn't pause my thing. I have to plug in my laptop, I'm so sorry. Ooh, how do I do this? Okay, there we go. So, again, the High Priestess paradox, that's the energy that's sitting in the now moment. And let me get my bearings. And one thing about this High Priestess paradox is that it's like, I feel like you strongly believe that something is about to play out in the future that's positive, right? Like something good is coming. And there's something terrifying about that, right? Because I can empathize in my own life where it's like, there's certain things that it's like, I know that they're going to happen. I haven't exactly gotten the confirmation about it, but it is a good thing, but it's almost like I don't even want to say it because I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to get my hopes up. I don't want to speak it, right? And the High Priestess, she's very good at not saying things, right? The High Priestess is incredibly cryptic. She knows when to say less and keep things to herself. And that's the way that I'm interpreting this information, right? It's like something about this Three of Cups is coming back, right? Whatever it is that you wish you could go back to, that you thought was dead and gone, coulda, shoulda, woulda, it's like that circumstance, whatever it was that turned out to be your Goldilocks zone in hindsight, is coming back and you know it, but you're afraid to even know it because you don't want to be wrong, right? Because you have been quote unquote wrong about things in the past, but you weren't wrong. It was the High Priestess's paradox, right? And things like that. So what's coming next in the position of Venus, which is basically like what you're moving towards or what you're feeling, is showing up as the Moon card. And this is basically talking to me about just instinct in general, right? Like you can see the animals on the Moon card that are basically, it's like their mating cycles are dictated by the moon, right? But none of that is conscious, right? They're just kind of following their instinct and moving in a particular direction, but they don't realize like, oh, you know, this is the new moon in Gemini, so that means that I must fly north for the winter or something like that, right? No, it's just a very automated process, and it's kind of like that's where you are already, right? Because again, with the Eight of Swords, it's like you're already following your intuition. With the High Priestess and the now moment, it's like you know how strong your intuition is, but it's like, it's almost like when somebody's walking on a tightrope and they don't want to look down. It feels something like that, where it's like you know what you're doing, but you'd rather ignore what it is that you know you're doing because you don't want to think about it too much because it becomes overwhelming and you don't want to lose your balance, right? It's like that Eight of Swords energy. But now that brings me back to the beginning of the reading where I was saying it's like Spirit is trying to show you something or get you to realize something, and it's red pill, blue pill, right? Like you have to realize it for yourself before it can be disclosed to you. And I feel like it has something to do with the High Priestess's paradox and the intuition and the fact that you can change things once they've manifested. For example, the circumstance, right? Like whatever it is that you want to theoretically resurrect never actually died. And that's how you get it to resurrect, is by affirming that it's still alive. And almost affirming to yourself, it's almost like the TV show St. Elsewhere back in the day, where in the final episode it turns out it was all a dream, right? It's kind of like affirming something like that to yourself, where it's like, this was all a dream. That makes sense with the Moon card energy too, in terms of like the way that you're feeling about things. But it's like, this was all a dream. I'm a master magician, master manifester. I am the High Priestess. I have concocted a heck of a creation for myself, but it was all an illusion that I concocted in order to protect the ego or whatever it may be. But now it's like those things can begin to dismantle. And what's interesting is right next to the Moon card, I have the Sun card. So I feel like, there's a new moon that's coming up on the 25th. So what is that going to be? Is that a new moon in Cancer, I guess? I don't know. Well, that's interesting because Jupiter is also in Cancer, right? And Jupiter is the thing that corresponds to belief systems or whatever it is that you think is dead. And I've been seeing a lot of astrology videos lately that are like, ooh, Jupiter's in Cancer. Thank God this is the best thing that's ever happened to us because it's the best energy ever. So maybe we can utilize that in order to rescript and reprogram and resuscitate whatever it is this thing is that we think has been deactivated, but it's still there, right? And again, I have the sun and the moon right next to each other, which is the new moon position. I'm not reading it as an eclipse, but more so the reboot or something that comes from that. But it also, like, there's something about the new moon that has to do with the power of the observer effect, right? Because there's no light, there's no visibility, and I feel like the Christian mystical version of the new moon is the 3 days in the tomb, right, between the crucifixion and the resurrection. So we're talking about something coming back to life, where Jesus is in the tomb for 3 days. Nobody sees what he's up to. Nobody sees what's going on. And that's where the magic happens. That's where the transfiguration happens, right? Which is it's very much so like the Four of Swords card, right? That depicts that little tomb, and people can say, oh, this card is about a digital detox, right? Unplugging your phone and going off grid and meditating or whatever it may be, right? But it's like the power of no observers, right? So in this overall circumstance, in terms of the general story that you're inside of, if I've said it once, I'll say it a million more times. The most powerful time to manifest is when you don't know what the hell is going on, right? When everything is happening off stage. According to quantum theory and the Schrodinger's cat concept and yada, 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 it's like nothing exists until we observe it. If we're not observing it, it is just particles in the quantum field that are neutral and meaningless until we project meaning onto it, right? So the dangerous aspect of things happening off stage is that we tend to fill in the blanks with the worst case scenario, right? So it's like if we don't know what's happening, we assume the worst thing is happening. And the example that I've shared on this channel before that I'll share again is many moons ago, I was in a tricky living situation where somebody was in the process of being evicted, and everybody and their mother was saying that this individual was going to follow the same script that they've always followed, right? So that they were going to behave a particular way. And of course, I did not want to experience that, so I kept affirming not on my timeline, but also pushing back with another story. And the story that I pushed back with, it was something that my mind had to accept as reality. It doesn't matter what other people accept, but my mind had to accept this as totally plausible, realistic, logical, most likely scenario. And the scenario I came up with was that this individual was not going to cause a problem, was not going to double down, was not going to do the expected thing, because their ego needed to protect itself, and their ego did not want to be under the microscope. And they recognized that if they pushed, right, that they were going to be put under the microscope and more issues were going to come from that. And that was exactly how it played out. The individual left as gracefully and seamlessly as possible, did not put up a stink, did not cause an issue. Everybody was shocked but me. and it worked, right? So this is basically talking to me about, like, there's a story that your ego mind can accept about whatever it is that you want to go back to that will allow this thing to come back, right? Because that's the law of attraction, right? You have to embody the vibration of whatever it is that you want to move towards, but you have to believe it as well, right? Belief is the key ingredient in the magician's recipe, right? He cannot do anything without belief. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these law of attraction mantras, is that we'll say things, but we don't exactly believe them, right? So you really have to believe the story that you're writing to rescript this reality. And it's interesting that the sun is in the position of Mercury, and Mercury is the way that the mind processes things, right? Mercury is like the mental computer that corresponds to the mind. And the sun is all about optimism, right? Kind of like optimism and your true will, but it also has an energy of innocence. It's not exactly fool card energy, but it is very pure and fun-loving and full of life and things like that. And it's just, I don't know, it's talking about just like the key, or like when you're doing your visualization process, right? To think about things from the most optimistic perspective, which I know sounds like beating a dead horse, but one thing I will say is that the way that I read this algorithm spread is that the biggest major arcana on the table indicates the most critical planet to play with right now. And right now the sun is falling in the Mercury position, right? So the sun is currently in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. So I think that that's interesting. But then we also have what would be the moon is the second biggest card on the table, which is in the Venus position. And I currently have the moon sextile Venus, or at least that's what's currently playing out in the sky. And the moon sextile Venus talks about very kind of like romantic or poetic types of communication, right? Think of Venus as being beauty and romance and harmony and yada yada, and Mercury is communication, right? So it's like, it's almost like one of the best ways to re-script this. Actually, now that I'm thinking about this, this might be the best way to re-script things in general, but it's almost like writing a song that has a melody that gets stuck in your head, right? Nothing annoys me more than when a song gets stuck in my head, especially a song that I do not want to be singing. Like that happens to me all the time where I'm like, the spell work. But what happens if you write your own song, right? And it's interesting too, because the Three of Cups almost looks like three people singing a nursery rhyme, right? Like something like that. But so yeah, if you could rewrite that script, could you write a little song or a melody that corresponds to it, right? And you don't have to be that inventive, right? You can steal a melody, right? Why not? Take your favorite Britney Spears songs and rewrite it, whatever. Because you already know the melody. Maybe you can even work with some of the lyrics of your favorite song or whatever it may be. Of course, it doesn't have to be Britney. It was just a joke, but whatever. But also, again, like that power of optimism and playfulness and innocence, right? Because it's like the reason why the sun is an innocent energy but not a fool is because it's like the sun is aware of the concepts of fear and war and disease and all of these horrible things, but recognizes the illusion in them, right? So it's almost like the jolly Buddha, right? Where it's like the Buddha has reached the enlightenment, sees beyond the 3D illusion or disillusionment of the matrix reality, recognizes that so many of these conflict programs are completely fictional, and if anything can kind of see the humor in it or beyond it, right? But it's like, it's that humor, it's the jolly laughing Buddha, that humor that almost, how would you say it? It's like it humiliates the thought form. What's a better word for that? That it's like, if I take a thought form seriously and I respond to it with fear, that affirms it. But if I laugh it off and I dismiss it, then that deactivates it and just takes the energy out of it, right? It's almost like it humiliates it one way or another. So if you're trying to deactivate something, you can use the humor, but also if you're trying to activate something positive, then you can still use that optimistic kind of sun-like energy. And then the final card in the deck, in terms of what it is that's trying to evolve, what it is that is in the process of manifesting and coming in, it's in the moon position, is the Six of Cups, right? And the Six of Cups is like that nostalgic full circle moment, but going back to a much simpler version of things, right? Where it's like this Three of Cups that we started with was probably a little bit more complicated, a little bit more structured in terms of the triangulation, maybe a little bit more rigid. But the Six of Cups that's coming in is very, I want to say loosey-goosey. What does that mean? It's very, fluid? That's not the right word. I don't know. Because it's like this Three of Cups is a set script. Almost like how I was saying the social ecosystem can be the family, right? So you play the role of child, parent, cousin, whatever. If you're playing the role of child to your parents, you're not going to really switch into becoming their parent. I know you can be doing maybe end-of-life care or something like that, but it's not exactly the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a lot more fixed. Whereas this Six of Cups is undefined, right? Where children are really, really good at like fantasy and role play, right? Where it's like they can be playing and it's like, okay, you're gonna be this character, I'm gonna be that character, and we're gonna play this game today, right? And then tomorrow we can play the game again and we'll switch characters, whatever it may be. It's kind of like that, where it's like moving into it's like a variation of this old dynamic, but without the rigid structure, where you can play whatever role you need to play in the now moment, and the integration is really smooth, kind of like I was saying about the laptop, right? Where it's not this complex system of downloading and integrating and plugging in wires and trying to get the Bluetooth to connect and what's the password and this device is not supported and yada. It's like, it's not like that. It's just boop, everything just clicks, and almost like you just become who you need to become when you need to become it, right? Like you step into the role almost like improv, but it's just organic, it's spontaneous. Maybe even going back to the moon card, right? It's instinct. Going back to the High Priestess, you've already mastered these things. You've already played all of these roles in the past, so it's like these things exist within your arsenal. But then again, going back to that Eight of Swords, right? It's like Spirit is trying to lead you to the red pill that is already in your possession, that you're already aware of, right? But it's missing just one variable, right? It's like it's a 10-page document, but there's a period missing somewhere or a comma. No more than that. I'm like, I need to pull another card. Let's pull another card just to get more information on what the heck am I even talking about, Spirit. What are we trying to pull in? And by the way, I'm going to pull a card from the Wise Cat Tarot. This is the most ridiculous tarot deck I've ever seen. Let me just show you what one of the cards looks like. These are space alien cats with one eye. Okay. Okay, so this red pill that Spirit is trying to lead us towards. Give me as much clarification on that, please, Holy Spirit. Okay. Six of Wands. So interesting, because Six of Wands is another one of those resurrection kind of energies, right? The story of the Six of Wands is that he's a soldier that went off to war so long ago that everybody in his village assumed that he's dead and that he lost the war and it's game over and they've counted him out, right? It's very much so the energy of the dark horse, right? Which basically is saying to me, what other people believe about your story is irrelevant. Let them be shocked. Let them be in for the plot twist of all time. What other people believes is irrelevant, and that could be an aspect of your story, right? Where it's like the song that you're writing or whatever it is that writes this script is like, in spite of other people's disbelief, this thing still happened, right? It's like the ultimate comeback kid kind of situation. I'm trying to think of like an anecdote or example from history that would be a good example. If I think of one, I will let you know, but let's see if I can get another bit of clarification out of that. The Hermit. I mean, the Hermit usually just talks to me about the energy of the individual inside job, right? Where it's something that's emanating from within you, so not exactly something that an external character is handing to you or revealing to you or anything like that, but it's also like a shift in perspective, because all of a sudden you have like a higher vantage point or something. I just want to pull one more card, the King of Cups, which is similar to a hermit energy in terms of being kind of in your own bubble or in your own space. So what's interesting about that is that the way that I see it, and I could be wrong about this, but this is just the way that I see it, we have absolute authority over our personal experience of reality. I cannot script somebody else's experience. I cannot really do things for them. If I tried hard enough, that would be qualifying as like black magic, right? But I can script things for myself. Now, theoretically, if somebody's interfering with me, then it's like, yes, you can, I think you can script those things. But in terms of the life story that you're writing for yourself, with you as the protagonist, we kind of designate the roles that other people play for us, right? So it's like when you designate somebody as an enemy or an obstacle or a problem or whatever, that is what they become. And I have done this to myself so many times. If I had a nickel for each time, I could beat Elon to Mars, I'll tell you that much. But unfortunately, what I've learned is that when I designate people as an obstacle, they become an obstacle. And the only reason that I realize that you can uncreate this is because there's been times when I've had to uncreate it. And I say, I love this individual, they're great, we have great chemistry, they're not an issue, whatever it is, whatever that makes sense, right? Because maybe you don't want to say that you love the person, maybe you don't want any relationship with them whatsoever. Maybe you just want to affirm that they are irrelevant, right? They are not an obstacle, they are irrelevant. They have no power over your story whatsoever, they don't script things for you. Try as hard as they may, whatever. But in the same respect, you can say the only reason why they even have power to be an obstacle in my story is because I granted that to them, and I now hereby retract that, right? Is that all that I want to say about it? I guess I want to get one more card about this thing that we're being led towards that we need to discover. I guess where to look. Where to look is the question. Okay, that's interesting. So the cards that have come out are the Imposter and the Mad King. So the Mad King, we've had a few. You can think of characters like Nero. I think in Game of Thrones they had a Mad King, right, that kind of created that landscape. And then that was usually, they also happen to be imposter kings, right? But putting this within the context of everything I just said about how we write the story, I guess my question would be, in your personal narrative, right? I'm not talking about the global collective narrative. There's too many Mad Kings to name, right? But in your personal narrative, who is the Mad King imposter that is wearing a crown they do not deserve? Write your song and uncoronate them. What does uncoronate mean? Abdicate? No, they abdicate, right? So what would you be doing? Impeaching? Can a king get impeached? I don't know. You know what I'm saying. Rewriting that story. It's interesting too because, so on the Mad King card I have 365 written, and 365 corresponds to Abraxas. If you've ever heard the stories of Abraxas, when you add up the value of the letters of his name in Greek, it adds up to 365 and yada yada yada. Abraxas is not an organic god. And what I mean by that is that Abraxas was created intentionally by people as a new god. And the thing behind Abraxas is that the story that was assigned to him and affirmed by the devotees or worshippers that created him, the story is that Abraxas is above God itself, right? So you have the Catholic paradigm, right, which is God and the devil, which they see as good and evil. And then there's this Abraxas character that's above those two, that they created to be above those two, right? And Abraxas is effectively neutral and indifferent. And they say that Abraxas would basically be the embodiment of effect, right? So think cause and effect, right? There's positive effect and negative effect. God would correspond to positive effect, Satan would correspond to negative effect. Abraxas, within this paradigm of Gnosticism, is the entity that gives effect to both of them. Now, first of all, I don't believe any of this. No Abraxas on my timeline. Disempowered, means nothing. SpongeBob has more power in this reality than Abraxas. Cancelled. But I'm saying this to say that this god was created to destroy other gods. It was also created to be indifferent and neutral so that black magic could be done in its name, because it has no morals, it has no ethics, right? That entity is basically the thing that I think gave credence to a lot of the psychopathy that's taken place in here. It's the energy behind it, so to speak. That being said, just like other individuals have created lesser thought forms or gods that have turned out to be very powerful, you yourself can create a thought form of yourself that is more powerful than anything else. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't exactly want to call it making a new god because I feel like that's heretical, but it's basically the idea that we program the Matrix. I don't know how else to say it, but it's like the Matrix was reprogrammed with this new application that was called Abraxas. And at that same time, there were a lot of Duke gods that were being born, right? So you had Abraxas, you had Mithras, you had Christianity was emerging at that time, right? That was the creation of a new god, a new thought form, right? So just like these other thought forms have been created to do bad things, thought forms can also be created to do good things, right? And in the same respect, it's like you don't even really have to create a new thought form so much as you can work with things that pre-exist, but just kind of define the terms and conditions of them, right? So it's like, I was raised Catholic. No matter how hard I try, no matter how far I wander, that paradigm is just tattooed into my beingness, right? So it's a lot easier for me to work with those characters than to work with any other characters because my mind just accepts it, right? And that's what I was saying earlier, right? You have to write a story that your mind accepts, right? So I ain't got no problem with Jesus. I ain't got no problem with the Holy Spirit, Mother Mary, the angels, the saints, yada, yada. The church and the institution, I have no love for that whatsoever, right? Do I think that the Bible is the absolute word of God? No, not at all. But I do believe in these characters and these figures, absolutely, and that we can work with them and that we can kind of get them to fit into a paradigm that is not toxic. I don't know how else to say it, but it's like these things can be extracted from the death cult, right? And the reason why I believe that is because they were initially created to counteract the death cult of Rome, right? Rome was a death cult. The issue with Christianity is that it was allowing people to have this direct experience of God and the Holy Spirit with no middlemen, no priest, no institution, no anything. It's like you are the magician, you are the priest, you are the one that can perform the healing touch and the miracles and the sacraments, and you can do all the things that Jesus does, and the Holy Spirit works through you, and blah, 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 blah. And it was basically teaching people how to activate their superpowers, in lack of a better term, right? But it's like this thought form, this concept, the Christ consciousness, was the thing that was rooted in. This is not trying to evangelize anybody. I'm sorry if it's coming off that way. I'm just saying it's working for me, so whatever. But either which way, create something that works for you, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Just create something that works for you, you know what works for you, and you can utilize that to reprogram your story completely. And I feel like I should just end it there before I ramble any further. Thank you for watching. If you're interested in a private reading of your own, hit me up. You can find the link in my bio. And other than that, I'll see you guys soon. Bye, y'all.